to introduce the last panel on the program. From Ohioans to Stop Execution, Abe Bonowitz.
Buenos tardes. Everybody, take about 5 or 10 steps in. Come in. Let's get warmer. Let's be together. My name is Abe Bonowitz. I'm proud today to be representing Ohioans to Stop Executions. I got my start on this issue here more than 20 years ago, and I'm so glad that we are at a turning point on this issue and on all these issues today in 2013. Today is El Dia de los Muertos. It's the Day of the Dead. It's All Souls Day. It's a day to remember those who've gone before us, those who have died, and to bring forth their spirits and to dance with them and to celebrate them. And I want to just take a moment to remember the victims of violence and the victims of state violence and all of our departed loved ones on this day. One moment. Thank you. Our first speaker today is Melinda Elkins Dawson. She is here to share with us a journey that nobody should have to take. And I want you to think about and listen to each of these speakers, but in particular Melinda, because sooner or later when you're talking about this issue, somebody is going to say, well, you'd feel different if it happened to you. And when that happens, I hope it hasn't happened to you, but when somebody challenges you, you can say, you know, you're right, but maybe I would feel like my friend Melinda Dawson's. So your friend and mine, Melinda Dawson.
Hello, everybody. I've been asked to come here and share my story, which I have for many years now. I am a true advocate against the death penalty. I experienced it firsthand on both sides of the coin, and I'll tell you how that went. On June 7th, 1998, my mother, Judith Johnson, was brutally murdered in her home. My 6-year-old niece, who was spending the night with her, was also attacked and brutally raped, but she survived. That morning when she told the police that the attacker looked like her uncle Clarence, who was my husband at the time, they arrested him. Simply on eyewitness testimony. Not only was he arrested for the murder of my mother, but he was also indicted and charged with capital murder. I cannot tell you, knowing that he was an innocent man and facing the death penalty, what toll that took on myself, our 2 sons, and himself. Ultimately, Clarence went to trial and was convicted, but was spared the death penalty. He was sentenced to 2 life sentences back to back to be served consecutively, which meant he would never have gotten out of prison ever. And I knew this was wrong, and through the turmoil of trying to come to terms with him being convicted and taking care of my children, I embarked on a journey to prove that he was innocent. It took me 7.5 years to investigate his case, collect DNA, and ultimately figure out who murdered my mother. When the day came that we were able to obtain DNA evidence from this perpetrator from the same prison that Clarence was housed in and the same housing pod, a cigarette butt was gotten from Clarence from Earl Mann. Clarence sent that cigarette butt out to his attorney, who in turn sent it to a laboratory, and the DNA evidence come back that in fact Earl Mann was the perpetrator and was the killer of my mother. Then the fight was on to have Clarence released. Our former Ohio Attorney General Jim Petro, whose office was right across the street, got involved, and we had many, many press conferences here at the State House, and he asked that Clarence be released on the fact that the DNA did not match him but matched another man. There was a fight with the Summit County Prosecutor's Office for that. Ultimately, December 15th, 2005, Clarence was totally exonerated and released from prison. And you can clap for that because that was an awesome thing. Then my journey began to make sure that Earl Mann was charged and convicted for my mother's murder. However, when I went to the prosecutors and I said, I do not advocate the death penalty. I do not want this man to receive the death penalty. I was told I had no choice. They had to charge Earl Mann with the same charges that Clarence were facing, and that was capital punishment. And I want to tell you that a lot of times this holds true for family members of a victim who don't believe in the death penalty. You don't have a lot of say in what those charges are. However, I fought them, and I came up with a plan to save Earl Mann's life, and that was if he would testify and ultimately confess to the murder, that we would take the death penalty off the table. And that ultimately happened. In September of 2008, Earl Mann was convicted and is serving 2 life sentences back to back and no death penalty. My views were shaped not only because Clarence was an innocent man facing death, but the fact that we do not have the right to say who lives and who dies. There's too many false confessions, there's too many false eyewitnesses, and the justice system is too broke. We cannot continue on with the death penalty with so much error in judgment. Thank you.
Thank you, Melinda. I should have noted that she is the vice chair of the board of directors of Ohioans to Stop Executions, and there are among us many murder victim family members who oppose the death penalty. And if you are a murder victim family member who opposes the death penalty, please just say so, and please make sure that you're signed up with us with Ohioans to Stop Executions, because your voice is so strong. You have a story that is undeniable, and it's so important that we all speak up, and especially for those of us who don't have such a story, that we also find ways to speak up. And there are ways. When I was organizing with the farm workers out in California, we had a phrase that we used: cada trabajador es un organizador. Every worker is an organizer, and there's something for each and every single one of us to do. And there's a lot more to talk about, but we don't have that much time. I want to make sure that I also acknowledge up here on the stage with us, he won't be sharing a story today, but Charles Keith is here. His brother is Kevin Keith, who was on death row, who may well be innocent, in all likelihood is, just haven't been able to prove it enough. We're able to show enough doubt that the governor changed his sentence to life in prison. His brother is still in prison. There's so much work to do in the struggle, and there's other people who are wrongly convicted who should not be in prison, death row or otherwise. There's so much work to do. Our next speaker is another person where, there but for the grace of God go I. He's going to share with us his story. And as he comes up, Joe D'Ambrosio, I want to also ask Father Neil Kukruthi to come and stand with him. And I know that's a little surprise, but Father Neil is another one of those people who's just doing his job and had to step forward and become a person that made a huge difference. Also up here with us is Derek Jameson, another survivor of Ohio's death row. Joe.
Come here. Thank you. Thanks for showing up tonight, or today. The system is broken, and I'm a prime example of it. If it wasn't for this man here, the state of Ohio would have executed me 10 years ago easily. I spent 22 years on death row for a crime I could not have committed. It wasn't the system that helped me. It was somebody outside the system. And then the grace of God, because not only is he a Catholic priest, he is an attorney, and he is a registered nurse. And he had to be all three to do that. And there is no other priest in the world that has those qualifications. If it wasn't for him, they could have not found out that I did not do this. Because the system is just so flawed. If you do not have money, power, or influence, and you get locked up into the justice system, you are in trouble. I am what I classify myself as the common Joe. I was never in trouble before. I have no criminal record whatsoever. I was in the military. I served 4 years, honorably discharged as a war veteran. And they turned around, and at the pointing of a finger of the man that actually did it, they arrested me, tried me with the shortest death penalty trial in Ohio, 2 3/4 days, and threw me on death row. And I rotted there because nobody wants to listen to the man in the orange jumpsuit. I pleaded with everybody, every innocent project, every journalism school, every law school. Nobody wants to listen to you. You're a convicted murderer. They all say they didn't do it. It's a lie. It is a giant lie. And the system has to be put aside, because I am only the 6th in Ohio history. He's only the 5th in Ohio history. They have executed 52 people. There's 138 on the row right now. When I got off the row, there was 232? A ridiculous amount of number.
One is a ridiculous number.
Yes. When it comes to the death penalty, it is. But if, like I said, if it wasn't for the grace of God, I would not be here. And the system is beyond being fixed. I just got off of a tour with one of the men that's an exoneree that got out in 1977. And they said they were going to fix it back then. This is now 2013. And they're still trying to fix it. You cannot fix something that's this broken, people, and have people's lives on the line. So it has to stop. And the only way it's going to stop is by yous. Because they are executing people in your name. And they don't even mention it anymore when they execute somebody in the paper or on the news. It's commonplace. It has to be stopped before another innocent person is executed. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Derek. We have another execution scheduled for November 14th. They're going to be experimenting on how we kill our prisoners. It'll be the first time in this country that they're executing a prisoner with intramuscular injection, not intravenous, not through the veins, but into the muscle with drugs that they've never used before. This is in the news today. Also November 14th, the Supreme Court task force that was set up to examine the death penalty and look at recommendations for fixing the death penalty is going to be having its final meeting before issuing its recommendations. And that is the invitation to us, to Ohioans, to stop executions. And that's all of us to get active, to get organizing, to get ready, so that when those recommendations are finally released, that we take them to this legislature and we get them to enact them. We don't have to change anybody's mind. And by the way, I used to support the death penalty. We don't have to change anybody's mind. All we have to do is find the people that we agree with, that agree with us, and sign them up and make sure they come here. On your issue, on our issue, on all of the issues that we're all partners with today. Get them involved, sign them up, get them out on the days that matter. And then make sure, if nothing else, they contact their legislator and say, I live in your district and this is what I want you to do. That's what we all have to do. Find the people that agree with us, get them to do something. This next speaker, our final speaker, needs no introduction, so I will give her none except to say that she is a dear friend, a longtime friend, and a hero in our movement, and a person who has made a hell of a difference in what's happened on this issue in this country, Sister Helen Prejean.
Who ever heard of introducing a nun and saying she made a hell of a difference? Hey, we're here and we huddled because it's chilly. And there's nothing colder in this country than the death penalty. I'm going to just give you a few little sparks to light up your heart. Here we are together. We can't make it without each other. Thanks to the wonderful song, spirit, all the groups who have made this possible. We can't do it alone. And one of the gifts I have found from working for human rights and ending the death penalty is the beautiful people you meet in the community around you. Few little sparks. One, I'm standing in the death house in Louisiana. One of the men that I was with who was to be executed, and the guard who had to officiate at the execution, one of the people, pulled me over and whispered in my ear, "Sister, I want to tell you, the man we're killing tonight is very different from the man, that young, brash animal that walked in here cursing God and everybody. He's been reading, he's been thinking, he changed his life, we got to kill him anyway." The death penalty hurts everybody. The guards that have to do the killing for us. What happens to them? Here they are, they're good people. And then they're called in to be on the TAC team, or they might call it the execution squad, and they got to go and take a human being from his cell, somebody's completely defenseless, and walk them out and kill them. And they're going to practice first, and they're going to have the warden meet with them, they're going to have the psychiatrist meet with them, they're going to have all of the officials, and I'll say, guys, you're not killing anybody tonight. You're just doing your job, and the Supreme Court has said this is okay. And our state legislature says it's okay. And the people of Ohio say they want it. Just do your job. We've been at this 30 years. We have killed over 1,300 people. We have gassed people, shot people, hung people, electrocuted people, and now, by whatever means or any kind of drug we can get, we're lethally injecting people without even knowing what's going on inside them as we do this. Up to now, there's been no oversight of the protocol to kill people. And it was on a cocktail napkin, what they used in Oklahoma. Oh, look, you could use these 3 drugs. And they passed it around, passed it into Louisiana, passed it around. This is something that ought to take care of the job. But we have more and more people standing up now. Like when New Jersey did away with the death penalty, 62 murder victims' families appeared before that legislature and said, "Don't think for us." I've been in the killing chamber in Louisiana, in Texas, in Virginia, and Texas, where they have killed over 500 human beings, all in our names. When you look at it, there are 3 witnessing chambers. One is the state's witnesses, that's over to the right. The gurney's in the middle in a kind of well. So they look through a one-way window. Nobody can see them. We're going to keep them anonymous, right? They're the witnesses for the state. Afterwards, they'll sign a paper that they witnessed this. It's all official. And about even with the head of the person who's going to be executed, lifted above, a representative sent by the victim's family be killed by the state. And they're told, we're going to get justice for you. You've lost your loved one. We are going to kill the one who killed your loved one, and you get to watch, and that's going to heal you. That's going to give you closure. That is going to give you justice. And the third witnessing chamber looks down at the gurney so the face of the person can look up to see who's behind that glass. And that is where mothers have stood with their hands against that glass and watching as the state killed their child. It's not that we're bad people in the United States. Most people I've found don't even think too deeply about the death penalty, because for most people it's not one of the moral issues that affect us personally. I gave a talk at Sam Houston State University in Huntsville, Texas, and I mean literally right down the road, like 2 blocks, was the busiest killing chamber in the United States, and it could have been in Calcutta, because the kids are totally disconnected from it, except for good professors of criminal justice, people coming in to speak to them. And you know, Thurgood Marshall, the first African-American person on the Supreme Court of the United States, said a long time ago that the American people, the polls show, yeah, they say they support the death penalty. But this is not a reflected opinion on the death penalty. Educate the people, wake them up, and they'll reject it. We are on our way to doing that. I want to tell you my greatest anger and outrage, a lot of it is reserved against the Supreme Court of the United States, which could end this thing tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock if they read the Constitution with the eyes of fairness and justice. But they don't look at the ground. And when you look at our sad history, very, very often, like Plessy v. Ferguson and other decisions, the Supreme Court has gone along with the racism in the people. We got work to do. I don't know what we can directly do with the Supreme Court, but we can wake up each other. And that's what community is all about. And don't think the death penalty is just a peripheral moral issue about what to do with a few terrible criminals that did a terrible murder. Every wound of our society is in the death penalty. Racism is in it, overwhelmingly. People who kill white people. Only poor people are selected for death, and then they don't get good defense. And maybe the deepest wound of all, and I'm looking over there at that soldier from World War I, the deepest wound of all in our country is this thing, this belief we have that violence is going to be redemptive for us. And when we have social problems, the way we solve it is violence. So the death penalty here, the drones hitting people and killing innocent civilians, war, the death penalty, military solutions, and pumping trillions of dollars into all of this defense instead of giving our children food and having decent schools and housing and the things we need. So if we want for peace, and we do want peace, we got to work for justice. And everybody here is a gift of God to us with potential that God's given us to stand up, to act together. It's the only thing that's ever changed the world, and it's what is changing Ohio. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Helen. You know, right over here on the sidewalk is the state seal, and it says right there, with God, all things are possible. We're going to win on all of these issues. I want to thank Howard for inviting Ohioans to Stop Executions to be a part of this. And for those of you who are here to help us celebrate our 25th anniversary tonight at the dinners inside here, I think I've been told we need to enter on the 3rd Street side, so just heads up there. Howard, you want to say goodbye? And thank you all.
Right. The Ohio Student Association is going to pump us up with a power circle. You can stay on the plaza as they do it, or you can come up here on the steps and watch them. Kathy, it looks like you want to do one more number before. Okay. The OSA folks, get your power circle organized. Come up here on the steps if you want to see a power circle.
We must never give up. 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 Never, 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 never. No, never, never give up. We must never give up. Never give up. Never give up.
of all